Welcome to the Political Insider, where we give you an overview of all the news, the political news that you need to hear. So if you enjoy this, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. We always like to respond to those comments. In the last 24 hours, the attention was at the Madlanga Commission, which was a bit like listening to a crime mystery novel. You know, it was like watching a courtroom drama, as we heard from witnesses on the ground that were telling us how these criminal syndicates had infiltrated the police. In fact, it's very difficult to work out where the criminal syndicates end and the police starts and vice versa. It looks almost like the criminal syndicates are actually in charge of the police, especially in Gauteng. A day off in the parliamentary committee meeting that resumes later with our now sort of retired on full pay Minister Senzo Mkhunu doing his third day of testimony in front of the parliamentarians. That should get pretty exciting. And just remember, you can follow this on the Political Insider, where we actually have a live feed from these commissions, from the Madlanga Commission, as well as the parliamentary hearings. So please use the Political Insider to follow this stuff. It's gripping. It's unbelievable to listen to this. So let's hear about what happened yesterday at the Madlanga Commission. It was done once again off camera, and in this case for good reason. We heard from our man named Witness A, who testified in his own voice from a remote location. He wasn't there, and he gave some unbelievable evidence. So who is Witness A? He is an officer in the organized crime unit in Gauteng. And he was the guy who was tasked with the job of investigating the murder of Armand Swart. What happened to poor Armand Swart? He was just a guy working at a company that sold springs, little springs that are used in great number by Transnet. These were produced for a couple of rand each by their small engineering company, and before being sold via a middleman to Transnet for over 150 rand a unit. This turned something that should have cost a couple of tens of thousands in the quantity that they needed into things that cost millions. This is your and my taxpayer money at work. And you can understand why Armand Swart had to go, or so they thought. The problem was, it wasn't Armand Swart that had tipped off Transnet that they were being ripped off. It was somebody else. But don't let the reality stand in the way of a good hit. And 3 hitmen decided to end the life of Armand Swart because they thought he had raised the alarm. They weren't very, very subtle about it. The only thing they did to disguise what they were doing was to clone a couple of number plates, but there they were merrily casing the place in a couple of vehicles. And in actual fact, one of the clone number plates was from a number plate of a vehicle owned by one of the hitmen's daughter's cars. I mean, it's crazy stuff, but you don't hire hitmen for their intellectual capability. You hire them because they are not scared to pull a trigger and end somebody's life over a couple of thousand rand. So we heard that there were 3 gunmen, right? And the 3 gunmen were a man by the name of Musa Kekana, Tiego Mabusela, and the most interesting one of all is a chap by the name of Michael Pule Tau, who is a police detective and involved in quite a few assassinations. And clearly the guy has got a lot of work. He has been linked to a number of assassinations, and clearly he's got support. And when these investigating officers bust this group of people that had assassinated Swart, they uncovered a real sort of sloppily done job, and you certainly didn't need to be the world's best detective to put this one together. There were cartridge shells They found the vehicle that they were driving in that still had rifles in it. A pistol was found there that was actually registered to Michael Pule Tau. When they got his phone, they found that he was communicating to Molefe, Katiso Molefe, the same guy who our legal system just last week saw fit to release on only 400,000 rands bail, because our legal system, certainly from the prosecution side, is completely incompetent or captured or both. So, what did we hear about this? Well, when they arrived for the trial of these hitmen, the place was apparently packed out. They were expecting an empty courtroom. Instead, the place was full, and it was full of policemen in plain clothes. They were trying to take pictures of the investigating officers. Quite clearly, Mr. Tau has got a couple of supporters within his other day job, which is being a detective, and these guys were out there to try and support him and maybe do a bit of work for him. After the trial, they realized they were being followed by cars and trying to be driven off the road. They actually literally had to go into witness protection in order to prosecute this case. It didn't end there, because suddenly witness A testified to the fact that he was invited to a party at the house on the hill, the White House on the hill, which apparently was some mansion, and there was a bit of a party going on. And he was all very excited to go to this party because he was invited by somebody quite senior, only to find out that there were extremely senior people at this party, like the Gauteng Provisional Commissioner of Police, Tommy Mtombeni, and the Sedibeng Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mbangwa Kwashu, were also at this party. These are people that were consorting with criminals. I mean, I know this stuff shouldn't surprise us by now, but it's still quite breathtaking. I don't know what's more breathtaking to you, the fact that the police are so compromised at a higher level, or that there were these kind of honest policemen that were there. In actual fact, these senior policemen were at a second party that they were invited to, which they didn't attend, but apparently these senior cops were at the second party, which was being run at a boutique hotel. At the first event, there were other senior policemen there, together with known criminals. A Major General Shabiri told these investigators that he had a little present. He had 3 envelopes. One was for the magistrate, one was for the prosecutor, and one was for the investigators, if they'd like to play ball. Well, clearly the magistrate liked to play ball, because he remanded the other 2 assassins but gave bail to Michael Pule Tau. Just to show you what General Mkhwanazi mentioned before, to say that even members of the judiciary are captured. If a magistrate is prepared to give this chap bail after he's just murdered somebody, to make it worse, the investigators were told that he was going to get bail even before the hearing. So they knew that the magistrate was captured, that the prosecutor was crooked, and that a hitman was going to walk free, which Tau subsequently did. I mean, this does read like a mafia novel. There is no other way to sort of look at it. And the only problem, of course, is to understand that at the end of the day, people are dying here. People are getting killed. Innocent people. People that make springs, which help trains go, which helps the country's economy grow. Just because they're trying to sell it at a better price, they get gunned down. And we end up paying millions for something that should cost thousands. Because dirty cops are prepared to protect criminals, and in actual fact, dirty cops are prepared to do the dirty work for the criminals by being the assassins. They've got access to guns, nobody will stop them, they know exactly where to go, they know how to shut down the prosecutions. And of course, you've got a dirty judiciary, which means that the people that do the crime don't do the time. This is serious stuff. this is just sort of one side of it. The idea that this is all about Tembisa Hospital is rubbish. Now we see that this is corruption that relates to Transnet, which means that somebody on the inside of Transnet was prepared to sign off on a multi-million rand purchase of Springs, probably in the knowledge that they could have saved millions of rands for Transnet by paying the correct price. But that way you don't get to take home a little something, something. We need to bust these syndicates. So the question is, who busts them? Well, according to Mkhwanazi, the political killings task team was busting parts of it. According to our minister, the political killings task team was getting in the way. Bottom line is that we don't know who has got the will other than detectives like our witness A, and we're going to hear from witness B soon, have got the stomach to actually do what they are paid to do, at the salary that they are paid to do, to turn down a bribe that comes from a senior commissioner. That takes some courage, and these people should be lauded. Instead, they have to hide away from other policemen. This is the depth that the country has sunk to. This is the new dawn that President Ramaphosa promised us in 2018 when he took over, saying there's a new dawn. Well, the new dawn seems to be increased and improved criminal syndicates, protected by some of the president's best friends. So this commission is opening up a can of worms, and it stinks. And we've got to let this thing run. And I think that the difference here between this one and the other commissions is the other commissions were about sort of money stolen. This is about money stolen, but people dying. Let's not forget that somebody like Armand Swart is trying to make a living, gets gunned down, gets shot 23 times, right? This is about poor grannies that go to the Tembisa Hospital and can't get medicine because the money has been stolen. So let's not forget what this is about. This isn't about the egos of our policemen or the egos of our politicians. This is about South Africans, the most desperate South Africans that cannot get what they need because the money's been stolen and nobody gives a damn. Okay, this isn't about, the fact that these same people like Katie Molefe can employ the most expensive lawyers who at night have to go to bed and say, I've done a great job today. I've got somebody who runs a crime syndicate out of jail. Well done to you. If you think that turns other people on, good for you. It's not very good for what's happening in the country. I got a feeling that this commission is going to make it harder for people to do their work afterwards. The mood has changed. So what comes up now in these commissions? Well, later on in Parliament, we are going to hear from the cat in the hat, Becky Tele, who is never met a criminal he didn't like. In actual fact, he looks like a mob boss himself. We know his previous association with criminals. He's going to be at the parliamentary meeting later this week after Senzo Nkunu. That is going to be brilliant to hear how he tries to spin his way out of that mess. And of course, at the Madlanga Commission, we've got a few more witnesses that are going to be testifying in camera. And pretty soon we're going to have the man that links a lot of this together, and that is this gentleman by the name of Brown Mokgotsi, who we still to seems like a bad guy, but he might be a good guy. Who knows? Who knows who the good guys and the bad guys are? It seems like there are a handful of policemen who do want to see crooked people behind bars, one of them being Mkhwanazi himself, right? And they need to be supported, and they will be supported, and they will prevail. Talk about people that should be going to jail. There is a meeting in Parliament that's being overshadowed by this particular parliamentary meeting on the Mkhwanazi allegations. And this is something we've mentioned before, but it's starting to get even more crazy. And this is the parliamentary meeting about the Road Accident Fund. Now, once again, what is important is that we don't make it seem like, like the victimless crime. No. There's a victim in this crime, a very, very big victim, and that victim is you and I. 2.18 Rand from every litre of petrol that you put in your car to go from A to B, that gets put in every taxi that takes people from A to B, that gets put in every bus. 2.18 Rand gets paid to the Road Accident Fund. And that money is meant to be there to protect people who get, as the name suggests, gets hurt in accidents, right, where they're not really insured and, you've got a legitimate claim. There's this big fund that gets set up, and they get lots of money that comes through there. The problem is that it's just too tempting for the comrades and the deployed cadres. And this guy, Collins Letswalo, he was the CEO of the Road Accident Fund, but he lived like a rapper. The guy was allocated 480,000 Rand a year for security. Now, that sounds like a crazy number, but no, not enough for our Mr. Letswalo. It managed to balloon to 150,000 Rand per month on security, on hiring BMWs, on putting his security up in hotels. 150,000 Rand a month. That's excluding his own salary, and he got paid nearly twice as much as the president. Probably did a bit more work, but hey, that's a different thing because it's hard work running a criminal syndicate. He ran an absolute show, and not the kind of show that you want to pay money to go and see, but that other show, right, that we're so good at running in this country. He had senior managers. In one case, he had a senior manager suspended for 5 years and 4 months on full pay. Can somebody please suspend me on full pay? Problem is I have to pay myself, and even I'd fire me after a while. 5 years and 4 months, no problem. This is our money, yours and mine, so just keep paying. Suspend on full pay. How this guy ends up the CEO, only ministers of transport can answer. And we know that the Minister of Transport is currently, the former Minister of Transport is currently Fikile Mbalula, and I think he was the guy who appointed Letswalo. Barbara Creasy is the new Minister of Transport. She hasn't exactly moved too quickly to do something about it. But most of the claims, 70% of the claims, legitimate claims of people that were injured in road accidents, were rejected on technicalities because the Road Accident Fund was using all the money for themselves, so they couldn't pay people that were hurt in accidents. But let's only look at people like Collins Letswalo, although we'd love to look at him a little bit closer, and we'd like to see him decked out in that new orange party that wears orange overalls. But lawyers will do claims at the Road Accident Fund pro bono. In other words, only get paid if they get success, but then they take up to 25% of your money. Now, if you're a law firm and somebody has to make a 10 million Rand claim and you're going to get 2.5 million Rand of this, you may want to pay a little bit of a finder's fee to somebody who will pass your claim. Just a thought. Lawyers, they're way above doing that kind of thing, aren't they? The whole system stinks and needs to be rethought. Because if we're going to have criminal, I would rather pay 2.18 Rand less per litre of petrol, thank you very much, than have this mess go on in the Road Accident Fund. It's this kind of thing that brings down governments. And the way this government their malfeasance is being uncovered, they're not going to last much longer. That's the news for today. We've got more news tomorrow. And please, I urge you to do two things. Don't be depressed by this news. Don't be depressed. We are uncovering this and we are highlighting this so that the people that are answerable to you and I know that we know. The news then also gets out to voters who in the past wouldn't have known what we know now. So this is bad news, but it's good news that we're getting this stuff out. So please don't be too depressed. So keep watching and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me on The Political Insider. We'll see you again tomorrow.